So if you're even mildly interested in the resell industry, you'll be aware of the massive submarket that is reselling groups, bot companies, proxy companies, and everything else in between. But how do you go from casual reseller to cook group owner, bot dev, or proxy wizard? So in this video, I'm going to be running through my journey and explaining how you can go from clueless to serious in the exclusive yet murky waters of the sneaker resell industry. One evening, after entering every sole supplier raffle for a mid-drop, your mate texts you and tells you they found this bot, and to get it, you have to follow their Twitter to try and catch a restock. After days of patiently waiting, you see the bot tweet out the infamous eyes emoji, which is sneaker Twitter vocab for just one thing: a giveaway. Your heart sinks as you retweet and shamelessly tag your friend for the third time this week. You see fully grown men in the replies desperately begging for a copy, and you decide to join them by complimenting the software you have absolutely no idea about. You notice a reply under the tweet with significantly more likes than the others. It's a joke from Michael. The joke isn't funny. You move on. 2 weeks have passed and you're beginning to lose hope. You've started following other pages but still have no idea what's worth buying, and besides, everything is out of stock. Reluctantly, you accept you're not copying the bot you want, which turns out is worth more than a small car, and instead, you download Discord and join a C-tier cook group. You have no idea what's going on, there's channels tagging you, and you've got told off for typing in member important. Why is reselling this complicated? 3 months later, you've figured out Discord, and you've made a few friends in the cook group you joined. A couple left to join other groups, but top geezers Kyle and Chris are still sticking around. You see the owner drop a staff application in the announcements channel, and you're tempted. After all, it's a free membership and a special colour if you get accepted. Your application gets rejected. Now what? Okay, so I think the start of my experience in the resale community is quite relatable, so I'm going to run through how I did things and give you a timeline so you understand how long each process took for me. So before I start, I'm not going to claim that I'm some incredibly gifted business mogul or social butterfly, because to be honest, I'm anything but these things. But having been in the community for a while and having gone from member to cook group staff to bot staff to group owner and bot PR, I can relate to the process which people go through. So I'm going to start from the start, which is for me September 2018. So September 2018, I was on Instagram scrolling through. I found a group called Drop a Clock. I had been following this group for a little bit, and after a while I noticed that they launched some staff applications on Instagram. I thought, you know what, I'll try to apply. What I did is I opened up the Google Forms sheet thing and I started writing in my answers. Now, what was really important about this point was that I genuinely took time and care in picking my answers and responses, and basic things like grammar, spelling, punctuation. These are all things that people take for granted, but when it comes to an application, people like to see that you've put an effort into these things. The number of times I've received staff applications in the Essentials, or when I was helping in Drop a Clock pick staff, the number of times you see people write one line and it's got like no capital letters and there's no commas and it's just a mess, or you see people writing massive paragraphs and there's no spacing between the lines and it's just a disaster. These are basic things that can make a really good first impression, and I don't know why people overlook these things, because to be honest, when it comes to picking staff, if your grammar is terrible, you're likely not going to get picked, because it just shows that you've not put much effort into the application. So if you've not put much effort into the application, why should they pick you? Anyway, so myself and Wick, who I didn't know at the time, got selected out of like 50 plus entries, I think, if I remember correctly. And from that, I then worked my way up over time and just basically tried to contribute as much as I possibly could. So in terms of the contribution aspect here, I think it's really important to realize that when you join a team, you have your set responsibilities, but you should always go above and beyond that. And the reason why I say that is because you need to make yourself indispensable. The second you become someone who does a role which someone else could do, you are no longer indispensable and you're no longer seen as valuable by the team. That's not always the case, but it often is. And if you look at some of the top names in the community, they made a name for themselves not because they were doing what they're expected to do, but because they went above and beyond and did the unexpected. So myself and some of my colleagues in this group, we worked really well together. We put forward ideas, but I always felt like I really tried to go in above and beyond and always tried to find new sources or suppliers or suggest monitors that work really well or suggest features that we didn't already have. But where do you go from there? So after growing for a while, I started looking to expand my reach, and we found a bot called balkobot. So it was on Twitter, it had like 600 followers, and it looked like a scam, to be completely honest. You need to realize that the scene in 2018 was nothing like it is now. Like, bots didn't have like this fancy graphic designer or like fancy videos at launch or like these big beta phases. Like, it wasn't like that. Bots just turned up and they would start selling copies. No one really knew if they were legit or not, unless from word of mouth. And you would just sort of have to risk it and see if it was a scam or not. The number of scam bots that arose from like 2018 to early 2019 was insane. And people would just buy them and, you know, reap the consequences, sadly. But I thought I would place my bets on balkobot. I bought the Adidas module. I think it was like $100 and something, and then I just joined it. I told Wick about this as well, and he bought a copy as well. And I told him that, look, like, low-key, this bot is kind of cooking Shopify. Like, no one really knows, but it is. So we thought it was kind of cool. So we decided we would write a guide for it because we like the bot. So we banged out this guide in literally one day. Don't tell Balko this, but it literally took one day to bang it out. And it was, to be fair, it was pretty good. It was like 20 pages long. I can't really take all the credit for it, to be honest. I think Wick wrote the most part, but I made it look pretty, so, you know, basically the same. Anyway, so at this point, we got invited to join the Balko team. And when I say the Balko team, it was literally just Balko and Shifty. So we got in pretty early. And that's something that's really important, is that you are not joining a team which is already established unless you yourself are someone special. Most people here will just be like regular resellers or people starting off or people who are like cook group staff and just want to progress. You need to get in early, and that means that you need to go out of your way and try to find software companies that are growing and software companies that are more likely to take you on than pre-established ones. You need to realize that a bot company will likely already have their own staff team, and them adding you to the team, a bot which already likely has resell, is obviously only in your favor, really. I mean, you'll still be offering to do tickets and stuff, but to be honest, if an established bot exists, they've probably already got a good system in place with a good staff team. So they don't need you, to be honest. It's important to also realize that when you join a company at like an entry level or like an early stage, you have a lot more influence as to how the bot's shaped and how things are managed and how things are run. It also allows you to develop an early relationship with the owner or developer, and this allows you to get a bit more confidence and learn a lot more stuff along the early stages of the bot's along the early stages of the bot's progression, which is really important when it comes to answering tickets and giving yourself better positions in the future with regards to the job you have at this company. Now, I know I'm focusing a lot on like bots and stuff, but it's probably because that's like the most prestigious role there is in the community. I mean, this same thing applies for like proxy companies, for cook groups. You just got to make yourself, you know, you got to try and get in early and try to develop a really good relationship with the owner, because at the end of the day, you can only progress as far as the owner wants you to progress within that company. So anyway, I had a little break between like January to like March 2019, and I went away as part of my degree for a little bit. But anyway, even while I was away, I still sort of, you know, maintained some level of communication and stuff. Still attended staff meetings, even if they were at like 3 in the morning while I was in Thailand. But I still went to them, and you know, it was worth it though, because it means that you stay up to date. Things move really quickly, so the second you start lapsing on communication or lapsing on community stuff, then you really start missing out. And because things move so quickly, if you don't keep up, you can get left behind and no one's going to tell you what happened because there's just too much going on. Anyway, so I came back and I continued creating ideas with Drop a Clock. And one thing to mention at this point as well is, although you need to go above and beyond yourself, you also need to know your worth, because if you don't know your worth, then you're just going to get manipulated and abused, and people are just going to really use you even though you're worth more than that. So at this point, I'm going to say really pick who you work with and pick people to work for that will help you grow personally and support your own ideas. This is really important to me, and this is why I try my best, at least, to encourage my own staff team members in the Essentials to launch their own projects. And if they do that, then I try my best to support them as best I can. It's really important that you work with people who do this, and it will allow you to thrive as a person, and it will benefit them because they've then got someone who offers another service which can be useful for their own product as well. So a little bit later on down the line of 2019, I became an admin in Drop a Clock, and at this point I started doing a lot more networking and learning a lot more about providers and services and trying to find better deals for the group. Things like finances and stuff were becoming more important to me as I sort of felt that responsibility within Drop a Clock, and by doing that I actually gained a lot of valuable experience, which I'll discuss in a bit. But it's also at this point that I got quite fortunate with balkobot, who ran a Gleam giveaway with all the staff, and it was, you know, a stroke of luck. There's been no other bot really which has done giveaways with its own personal staff members, so I was very fortunate that Balko allowed us to be part of that, and that boosted my followers, I think, by like 8,000. So by the end of that, I think I had like 12,000 followers or something like that, which is really significant. And although I had been growing it through, like, you know, those 4,000 followers I'd gained, which were through like natural growth, through like making videos and tweeting and just commenting on other people's tweets and stuff. These are all really important aspects of networking that you really need to knuckle down quite early, especially now when you've got such a saturated market and so few jobs going about. You really need to develop good networks, and by doing so, you can really elevate yourself to positions where you can get people in higher positions vouching for you to get jobs in other places. This gives you more opportunity. So, for example, when I say networking, it doesn't need to be with like the most elite of the elite. It can be with anyone, other cook group staff, proxy company staff, bot staff, anyone. It doesn't matter, even non-staff team people. I mean, even if someone you see around has like cooked a few pairs, even just by saying like congrats, nice cook, you know, that's the start of a relationship. And it's important to build these relationships because you'll be surprised about how many people you meet initially at one point, and then give it about a year, and then you'll either be working with them or you'll be working for them. It's really interesting to see, and I think this happened dozens of times for me, and I find it really strange where I'll look back on like a DM and it turns out that we'd initially spoken in like 2018. This is actually the case for one of the guys on my team. He was actually going to sell me a PD copy in like 2018, and I don't think it didn't happen. But then I hit him back up in like 2020 saying like, hey, would you like to join my team? I scrolled back on the chat and it turned out we'd already had a chat in 2018, so that initial rapport was already there. And because we were polite to each other and we had good chat and we were respectful, that really, in my mind, cemented the idea that, you know what, this guy's a sound guy. He's not become a prick in the last 2 years, so I'll take him on. That guy's Joe, by the way, if anyone knows him. But yeah, let's move a bit further down the timeline. So towards the end of 2019, I'd started to develop these networks and these skills, and most importantly, I think for me, was a mixture of the friendship groups that I'd created as well as the communication that I'd developed, not just with these people, but within sort of this sub-community, which I'm going to call my followers on Twitter. This was important for me because I was getting fairly decent engagement, which is really important if you want to set up your own personal project. And secondly, I developed an element of respect. This element of respect was really, really important for me because it gives you that trust factor, which so many people don't have. And you can have as much clout as you want, but if no one trusts you, then you're going to struggle selling products and you're going to struggle forming partnerships with those products, which is really important nowadays because whether you form a bot, a proxy company, a cook group, you need partnerships with other products in the market, whether they be rival products or they be complementary products like proxy companies doing group buys in a cook group. So at this stage, it was sort of late 2019, and I figured, you know what, I feel like I've got all the skill set now, which I can use to maybe start a digital personal project. And so I did. I made something called the Essentials, which is obviously a much bigger thing than when I first started. And yeah, I mean, I started it thinking it was going to be like a little side project, but obviously it kind of blew up, and it's even got different divisions now. We've got a Chinese division, and we've got like a sister beginner group, which is ResellApprentice. But these things sort of add up, and the networking and stuff, they all came into this. So at this point, I'm going to stop here and say, know your limits and know the risks that you want to take. If you're someone that, like me, sort of was starting from zero at the start of their resale journey and just wanted to sort of see where they ended up, then I'd say take as low risk as possible with your personal projects. And what I mean by that is, don't invest too much of your capital in something that you can't guarantee a return on. The thing with the group is that I knew I had a decent following with decent engagement. I knew I had decent relationships with providers, so I could get all these things set up quite quickly. And I also knew that I could sell a number of lifetime memberships, which would cover the initial costs of things like the dashboard and stuff, which tend to be the most expensive aspects at the start at least. I also decided quite early on that I wanted this to be quite a budget-friendly group, and so therefore my outgoings were also quite low. We didn't even have monitors at the start, and in fact we didn't have monitors for ages. We only really added them towards the end of 2020. That's not to say that that was to the detriment of the group, because it wasn't. I mean, the group's been growing pretty much every single month since we began, and the retention rate has been pretty excellent overall. But I never once thought, you know what, I'm at financial risk by running this group. And because I had made those provisions at the start through careful planning and financial planning, I knew that I wasn't really going to lose money from the group. So end of 2019, the group was there. I decided, look, I can't run like a group which is growing, as well as work for Balko and Phasma and also help in Drop O'Clock. So I figured I have to step down from something. Bear in mind, this is all happening during like my final year of university, which is like finals year. If you know any dentists, you'll know how stressful finals year is for dentistry. It's just manic. So I stepped down from my Drop O'Clock role, but only when I felt comfortable that Essentials was self-sufficient and that I had enough energy and time to run the remaining projects which I wanted to work on. So over time, Essentials started growing and we expanded into the Mandarin section, and I used exactly the same mindset for that section. So I got a guy who I worked with very well in Essentials, and we worked together to create EssentialsCN. And initially we sold lifetime memberships, which covered the cost of the dashboard and would cover the cost of the first month. Therefore, it was pretty much a zero risk game at that point. So we were fine. You know, if it worked, it worked. If it didn't, it didn't. And thankfully, it worked out. It was the same principle with Proxies, although with Proxies, it was a little bit of a different scenario because at this point, I'd already gained some capital from my other projects. And at this point, I was able to take a bit more risks. And I feel like the proxy industry is a very risky one, especially how saturated it is now. When I started it, it was quite saturated, but now it's saturated to a point where companies are going up and then going down within like the space of a few weeks because people realize how hard it is to shift the same product which everyone else is selling. No matter what people tell you, pretty much all proxy products on the sneaker Twitter market are the same, if not very similar. And pretty much everyone gets it from like the same source. If you know, you know. So you need to really weigh up the risks and benefits and figure out what risks you're taking and whether you can genuinely afford to take it. The way I see it is that if tomorrow you lose all the money that you inputted, and you know, if you've taken your profits from that first month, then would you be absolutely devastated? And if the answer is yes, then you probably shouldn't do it, because to be honest, the market and the industry is just too fragile and risky for you to take that risk. I would suggest going something safer. So if you want a summary as to where to start, I would say do this. Firstly, learn as much as you can by being a member. Be a member in a group. That's genuinely the best place to start, but don't use that for your own reselling stuff. I mean, obviously do, because you're paying membership, but the main aim should be to learn from the staff which are there, and not only the big admins or the owners or whatever. Learn from the support staff, see how they manage tickets, see how they manage their time, get to know them, ask them, do you do a degree, do you work, do you have a side hustle, like is this your side hustle, is this your main job? Just see how things are going, and then you can learn a lot from that. Once you've developed these skills, you can then start applying your knowledge and trying to apply for your own roles. And at the minute, I completely appreciate how difficult it is to get a job in a lot of different companies, but I can guarantee you there's always a company somewhere which is hiring, and they want people who are reliable and sensible, and more above everything else, they want someone who's going to go above and beyond to help the brand which the owner owns. Because if you help the brand, you're directly helping the owner. And when I mentioned about the risk earlier on, owners love nothing more than reassurance that people around them want to help them. So if you can do that, you're putting yourself at a massive advantage. I think slow growth is really important. Rushing into things, it can be quite tedious, and it can be very difficult for yourself, because you can put yourself in situations where you're going in too deep too quickly. You might be underqualified despite what you might think to do a job. And especially if you're a bit younger, you need to reach a level of maturity where you can achieve these things. That's not to say you need to hit a particular age to get somewhere, but you need to understand that you can conversate with people and ensure that you have a maturity level where people will appreciate that you're working for them, and you won't let things like emotions get the better of you. If someone pisses you off, you should not be arguing with them. You just let it go. Think about the number of people who are doing really well on the scene and who people work with and give opportunities to, and think about the ones who, even though they might appear to be doing well, but everyone hates. Think about the difference and think about who you really want to be. I think it's important that finally you really understand what your aims are, because if you're not aiming to be here for a while, then this probably isn't for you. You should maybe just look at the reselling stuff and just focus on that, and then when you want to dip, you dip, because this can be quite a commitment. Also understand that if you're doing things like school or college and stuff, that this will take up your time. So you need to form a really good work-life balance. Often it becomes a work-work balance, as I'm experiencing at the moment, but at the end of the day, we're all here to make money, and some of us are also here to make friends. So the relationships that you can get out of this scene can often be as important, if not more important, than the money you make from it. So just remember that as well when building relationships. Anyway, this is dragging on, and I doubt anyone's actually watching at this point. So I'm just going to stop there and just really quickly summarize the 3 most important things you should take from this video. So 1 is to learn and observe. Don't jump in too early, and make sure you know the basics. 2, work in a positive team environment which will help you grow, and not a team which is toxic with a negative outlook on anything. If the team environment is negative and toxic, it'll rub off on you without you even realizing. And trust me, that's not good for yourself and not good for anyone else either. And 3, go above and beyond whoever you work with. This doesn't just apply to the resale industry, but in the wider workspace. Especially for you younger guys, you really want to be pushing yourself to achieve as much as you can and showing everyone that, you are worth being here, and also that you are worth more than that, in that you can progress, and more importantly, you can bring value to the brand that you're representing and working for. Okay, so that concludes this video. I hope it was something useful, and thankfully it wasn't just shit posting like all my other videos are. If you did find it useful, please drop a like at the bottom. I'd appreciate that, and let your mates know about the channel, as I'll hopefully be posting a bit more info about this kind of stuff, as I know it's sort of like a grey area for a lot of people and people want to learn more. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.